In this talk we're going to deal with security and networks. Now this is one of several talks on this topic, and it's advisable that you check the others as well. But let's start. Here we're going to talk about specifying access to a computer system. Now, access may be restricted to a specific IP address, an Internet Protocol address, to subnets or domains that are defined at the server. So the access may be restricted at the server level, that certain sites, certain activities are blocked off at the server level. And access may be controlled in that way, and companies may allow employees or managers or whoever to access certain sites, certain parts of the network, and not others. However, this won't stop a determined hacker who may appear to be logging on or logging in for an authorized source, when in fact the illusion was created by software and tuned hacking skills. So advanced software and hacking skills are used to gain access to the system. It fools the system into thinking that this person, this user, has got access, when in fact it doesn't. Now, there are always determined hackers. It seems to be the nature of the world in which we live. People like to break into systems. Some people like to break into systems. It's difficult to say why. It's just, it happens. It has always happened. Some people think it's because they want to boast amongst their colleagues that they managed to break into a system, break into a bank, or break into a company, or to do some damage. Sometimes psychologists who look at this area talk about planting a flag saying, I've been there. I've broken into the system and I can prove I've broken in. Some people are just downright criminal. They want to break in and steal. They want to steal information that can be sold for commercial reasons. There are all sorts of motivations behind hackers. What we do know is that hacking takes place. That's what we can all agree on. So sometimes hackers break in and they pretend to be someone they're not, and in that way gain access, and in that way can do their damage. Sometimes it's called spoofing. Spoofing means the hackers get in pretending to be authorized when in fact they're not. And they can use software and very elaborate tools to spoof, to pretend there's someone they're not, and gain access. Ideally, the access should be restricted to Internet Protocol addresses, IP addresses, the addresses that we type into a browser. Well, the more primitive addresses we type into a browser. In other words, the numbers we type in, the code we type in to bring up a particular domain. So there's always a battle between the people who want to defend and the people who want to attack. That's what it comes down to. And this is an ongoing battle. Now, it may be that access is restricted by names and passwords. The safest passwords make no sense and ideally do not refer to common words relating to the company, to the product, or to an individual. The best passwords are just random sets of letters, numbers, and symbols. These are the strongest passwords, difficult to break. A password may be drawn from 36 keys on the keyboard. There are 26 alphabetic keys and 10 numeric keys. Well, in fact, it may be drawn from more than 36 if we include special characters like ampersand and tilde and inverted commas and the dollar sign and the pound sign and so on. So it may be drawn from more, but let's just say it's drawn from the 36. Let's just say we keep it the alphabet, 26 letters, and 10 numerical letters, 0 to 9. Now, an 8-character password drawn at random will have 36 combinations. In other words, we will have that many combinations. We will have, in fact, that number there, which is a pretty big number. It's trillions. It provides good security if the letters are drawn genuinely, they're drawn randomly. But it's not a total solution. It's not a total fix. Hackers are determined people. They will have algorithms to try and break into that code and try and smash it and try and gain access. In fact, the more secure a site is, almost the more attractive it becomes to hackers to try and get in. It may be that access is controlled by using codes and encryptions to restrict access. Secured socket layers, SSLs, was proposed by Netscape and is used widely in e-commerce to try and control the flow of information, to try and ensure that the information flows from those intending to send and those intending to receive. This protocol, the SSL, can authenticate servers, encrypt data, and then verify a client's identity. And SSL runs in various browsers, so it's possible to use it quite simply, quite straightforwardly from the user's perspective. But in the background, it's quite a strong means of protection. We could also have the secure HTTP, and that's another form of protection. Protecting access non-repudiation. For successful electronic data transmissions, both the sender and the recipient can validate their role in the transmissions process. So it could be, if it's a very secure system, the sender validates who he or she is and sends out the data, and the recipient must validate he or she is and receives the data. So it's at both ends. There is security at both ends of this data flow. If either of them denies their role, then the transmission would fail. Well, that's a good improvement in terms of the use of secure data. The problem is that we want to use the internet nowadays for banking and for commercial purposes, and we send out a lot of data about ourselves to various servers which may share the data and pass on the data and so on. So it's very difficult to have this type of system where one needs to send the data and have it encrypted and have passwords at one end, and also have decryption, appropriate decryption, and passwords at the other end. Generally speaking, the systems want to be more efficient, i.e. faster, in the use of their processing time. Addressing security issues in electronic commerce. Well, we could have IT audits. An effective security requires IT auditing. And the process involves the following stages. Authentication checks to see that the person is who they are. Now this is becoming quite common, even with email facilities, Hotmail and Outlook, and Google uses it a lot on Gmail. Every so often users are asked to verify who they are. Perhaps enter a telephone number and answer security codes that were used, security questions were used when the account was set up. There could also be data integrity checks, that some data is sent and then the receiver is asked to verify what was sent. And of course, virus checks. virus checks at either end is useful. Virus checks when the data is being sent, and a virus check when the data is being received. And a translation check. Sometimes a code may be entered at one end and it needs to be translated at the other into a meaningful code at the other end. And that's a good way of trying to secure a transmission. And control checks, just controlling the whole system to see how the system works, the various processes in the system, and trying to introduce layers of security at each level if possible. And developers are constantly on the lookout for ways to make the system more secure, because unfortunately the hackers continue. Hackers exist. They seem to be motivated by the desire to get into systems, to steal data, to wreck servers, distort information, and it is counterproductive. It's a waste of resources. It's also very dangerous for the business community. It can cost jobs. It can wreak havoc on livelihoods, on families, because the people working in the business may lose their job as a consequence of a hack. So it's imperative that companies, antivirus writers, government agencies and so on try to develop techniques that counter the virus writers. Let's look at authentication checks. This involves secure passwords. Well, almost goes without saying that once a password has been issued, it should be secure, and only the system knows what the password is, so to allow entry, and the user knows the password, and that's it, it's secured. Documentation and delegated levels of authority are established and reflected in passwords. Some passwords are more important than others. So certain, say, people within a business may have a certain level of access. More senior people may have a higher level of access and can get more information. So different parts may be cut off depending on the passwords that are used. User passwords are delegated, or may be deleted, I should say. User passwords may be deleted. If they're not used for some time, then the user passwords could be deleted by the system. Dormant accounts may be removed. And logins may be monitored and controlled and limited. If someone tries to log into the system and makes many mistakes in the process of logging in, there may not be a real person logging in. It may be not an authenticated user. It might be a computer trying to log in, or it may be a hacker trying to just randomly break into a system by typing in random combinations. It's very unlikely that hackers would do that because they know how sophisticated the systems have become. But if someone continuously makes mistakes in logging in, the system should be alerted that there is a possibility of an attempted hack. And it may be that the number of login accounts per machine is limited. Again, to try and stop many people using machines, trying to gain access to higher levels of data or whatever. The machines are designated to have a certain number of logins and no more. And the logins could even be targeted at particular levels of information within an organization. The senders may be verified. Not only do the senders have to log in, but they may be asked security questions to verify they are who they are. Control systems and protocols are in place and can automatically verify receipts. Well, ideally, both ends of the transmission should verify. The person sending it should verify who they are, log in, use an appropriate login code, verify who they are. At the other end, the system should also run an antivirus and make sure that the information that's been received is clean, and verify that that person is allowed to send the information that's been received. Agreements and legal papers exist to ensure acceptance and non-repudiation of electronic communications. There should be agreements on all sides. If it's a very secure system and a very important system, let's say in business, then the people sending should be recognized, not just by the computer systems through the various codes that they use, but should also be recognized legally. It should be recognized by the different parts of the organization or different companies who are subscribing to the network, that certain companies or certain departments or certain individuals have the authority to send information, so that if information comes from a source outside of that circle, then it's suspect. It may contain viruses, it may be damaging. A data integrity check. Well, an integrity check detects invalid data and checks that the data sent matches the data requested. Clearly, if there's a mismatch between what is sent and what was expected, that data may have been corrupted in transmission. There may be a virus in operation that has altered the data or changed the structure of the data. Because viruses are widespread, continuous monitoring is used and is required. Viruses propagate themselves between machines. They jump between machines. They're sent in emails. They're sent in data packages. They're sent in executable packages, for example, in software applications. So the viruses jump between machines, and it's important that all the machines that participate to a particular network are monitored, and there's good high-level security on those networks. A translation check. Well, file compatibility is necessary to ensure that data can be transmitted and received in a useful manner. The data sent must be in a structured format that it can be read and interpreted at the other end. If the data sent is altered, say by a virus, it may arrive in a scrambled sense and not be suitable for reading with standard applications or with applications that were agreed between the sender and the receiver. So it's important that the data can be translated, can be sent from one machine, received at the other end, and then interpreted, translated, and used usefully at the other end. The translation problem may be important with upgrading software. Different versions of software may simply cause the problem. But it may be more sinister. It may be that a virus has altered the structure of the data. And that's the crucial aspect here. That's the crucial point. Control checks. All involved in electronic commerce must ensure the integrity of the data sent and received. A checklist of controls and monitoring is needed to the correctness of data. So it's important that everyone who's involved in the sending and receipt of data, if the data is high valued, say within a company, then there should be a checklist of controls. Who sent it? What time was it sent? What format was it sent in? What protocols were established for sending it? Who received it? What time was it received? What software was used to open it? and so on and so on. And there should be a vital check for antiviruses right throughout the process to try and ensure that the data sent was the data received. So there's server security. There's firewalls and there are proxies that may be used to try and secure the data and ensure that the data makes sense. Network servers are always vulnerable to attack from outside sources. Server security is an ongoing task. As I said earlier, hackers seem to want to get deep into systems and distort the data and then boast about it, tell their friends. Or, as I said as well, it could be simply criminal behavior. They want to get into systems to steal data, to take out packets of data and then publicize the data or sell the data to third parties who want to use it for criminal purposes. Firewalls are pieces of software or hardware that allow outsiders with authorization to enter the system. So a firewall it's like a big security barrier that systems may use. Windows has got a firewall. So firewalls will block certain pieces of software, certain transactions. And the firewall may be programmed to block all of those types of transactions. And companies may have firewalls, and the firewalls may be set to block certain transactions and allow others. But that's the first line of defense. The firewall is the company's first line of defense against hackers. They may be used over a LAN to regulate access to various parts of the network. So a LAN may use a firewall to allow users in or to stop users from getting in. So it may be used to control users as well. The firewalls only protect what's inside it. So whatever's inside the firewall, that's been protected. On home computer systems, the firewall is what protects the computer. That, say, a Windows system, when the computer starts up, the firewall starts up and will stop certain files from coming in and block certain files. So it protects what's inside. A common form of firewall is proxy. This is a small program that is able to read messages on both sides of the firewall. So the proxy can read what's happening on either side of the firewall. All requests are checked before passed to the server. The response is eventually passed back to the requester. So a proxy is checking on either side. Proxies increase security by controlling authentication and checking all logins to the server. The disadvantages of proxies are that there is another point of activity in the network, and therefore there's more opportunity for the hackers and viruses to infiltrate the system. So it's like all great ideas, there's a downside, and the downside is not just that the proxy can check on either side and see if the messages are legitimate or not, but the downside is it's another way in and another area for attack by hackers. A final type of virus or disruption to networks is what's known as the denial of service attack, sometimes known as distributed denial of service. This is the subject of a separate part of a different talk in this series, so I'm not going to go into detail here on it, but just to give a brief explanation. Sometimes hackers gain entry to a computer system and then use that computer system to request a particular site. It's as simple as that. They use the computer to contact a particular site or send an email to a particular site. And if enough computers do this, if the hackers can get enough computers to do it, then the server providing that site will overload and the site will collapse. So it's a denial of service. They don't actually attack the server itself, the server providing the site. They attack other systems. It could be home computers, so that the home computers hold this virus, and when the home computer is logged onto the network, onto the internet, it starts to access that site. It calls up that particular site. And if enough computers around the world are calling up that site, the server will overload and the site will collapse. It's a denial of service. And this can take sites offline. So sites that we consider to be secure may go offline because simply their server is unable to cope. It's unable to cope with the demand. And the demand is coming from computers all across the world who may be infected by this particular virus. The virus simply calls up that site, or it could be it sends an email to a particular address, and again overwhelms the email client. So it's not attacking the server itself. It's using other systems, other computers, and so on, to simply call up that site and overload the site. The demand overwhelms it and the site collapses. So that concludes our talk on this issue on security. It's worth reading the PDFs listed on Moodle to fill out your information here. But that's all I'm going to deal with in this session. I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.